It's one thing to survive what has been done to you. It's another thing entirely, though, to face what you've done to other people. Just saying, right? The word you can't take back, the damage you didn't mean to cause, the moment you wish you could undo. Anybody else been there? Shame will tell you that there's no way forward. But here's the truth: redemption is possible, growth is possible, and freedom is possible. And can I add, anti shame is possible, forgiveness is possible. And it all starts with owning it. And today, that's what we're going to talk about. When you've hurt somebody from your pain, where do you go from there? Have you ever hit a moment where success wasn't enough? Where the weight of your past and the scars no one sees, or the doubts you don't dare voice, keep you from breaking through to the life you know you're capable of? Maybe on the outside, you've achieved more than most, but inside, there's still something holding you back. If that hits home, take a breath. You found your people. You found your tribe. Welcome to That Shit Does Not Define You, Stories of Hope. I'm Athena Captain, joined by my co-host, Jada Haycraft. This isn't just another podcast, friends. It's a space to strip away the labels, the shame, and the invisible barriers standing between you and your next chapter in life.
In every episode, we'll bring you raw, real stories of resilience, people who have rewritten their lives, and give you the strategies and tools to do the same. Whether you're climbing out of rock bottom or breaking through to your next level, your future starts here. Let's get started.
So I just want to thank you, everyone who is here with us today. This has just been such a fun podcast to do. Man, we've had some good interviews. We've got more great interviews lined up. Please like and subscribe. Tell your friends about it. This is where we get authentic. We get real. We tell the real stories. And Jada, there are just too many people that their stories aren't being told, and those stories are the stories that need to be told to help other people. So that's why we're here. Please share us. We want to get the message out. We want people's lives to be changed. But today, as we talk about what do we do when we hurt people, we're going to do something totally different today. I'm really excited about this. Jada, what are we doing that's crazy today?
We are going to shake it up today, and I get the honor of interviewing the one, the only, drumroll, Athena Captain.
Not like I don't do enough talking as it is already.
Man, but I'm very excited for this one. It's not every day that I get to interview Athena and ask her to be vulnerable, and well, she'll be vulnerable every week, but it's not every day that I get to ask her the questions. So
Yeah,
I'm very
absolutely.
excited. So
Yeah.
I'll just jump right in if you're okay with
Yes,
that,
please.
Athena.
And can I just say why we're doing this? Because
Yes.
I didn't want to ask anybody else to be this vulnerable. I mean, it's really hard to come out in public and say, hey, I'm the one that hurt people. So I just want to let you know, I'm going to put myself in the hot seat for you. If you have been hurt, you will have hurt people. That's the way it works. Hurt people hurt people. So I just want to again say no shame. I'm not carrying any shame here. And I just hope that my story empowers you to feel like you can tell your story and that you can rewrite your script. So, all right, I'm ready. Got my
Mm,
vest on.
I love it. Well, cool. Well, so I have the pleasure of knowing your story, and I know a lot of our listeners have heard snippets from other episodes. So let's start with you just taking us back to your younger self. What was driving your behaviors in those years when your survival came first? And then how did that childhood trauma shape how you showed up in relationships back then?
So, if we talk about it, my childhood from 5 to really about 16 was shaped with a 10 out of 10 on an ACE score. And if the easiest way for me to explain it without going into a lot of the abuse detail, which I don't, not necessary every time, is just to say, if you can think it, I've lived through it. And of abuse, neglect, physical, sexual, emotional, all of those things. So those things make an impact, right? They make an impact to you. And interesting enough, Jada, I'm being very vulnerable. So I'm going to give you different chunks of time. And from 5 to about 12, how I found myself responding to other people was I lied a lot. I lied about my circumstance. I either made it better or, better than it was, or I, like, literally, I know this sounds crazy. I made up, like, I remember a show and tell once where I knew I had nothing to show and tell, right? Um, and so, embarrassed that I knew I had nothing to show and tell, I just made up a story that I got a rabbit, which was just a lie. But what it did is I was lying to survive. I was lying to not let people see just how horrific my life was or to give them a glimpse into the realities of my life. But most importantly, I would say I lied to myself. I One of the side effects of being traumatically abused repeatedly is you learn to protect your abusers, protect yourself. In a weird way, you're protecting yourself so that you don't tell everybody how bad it really is. It's anti protection, but you think it is protection. So, what happened in the younger years is that I struggled to have authentic, real relationships, right? Because I wasn't being authentic and real with myself. And I couldn't let people really know how bad it really was. So I robbed myself of a lot of really good relationships and I made myself look like a fool to a lot of people at that age. I mean, let's just be honest, I'm sure. Now I had a few friends that were my friends back then, that, uh, I would say they would say I was still a good friend, but I just wasn't emotionally available. I didn't show up authentic. I didn't show up, really, I didn't show up. I existed in a lot of that. Now, I do wanna go into my 20s though, because this goes more into what we're talking about. So in my 20s, I really started digesting about when I was between 19 and 21, I don't remember exactly now, and I think we've talked about this. I remember what I called my big fog,
Mm,
and that's where I had my nervous breakdown and which, by the way, is very common. It's extremely common. You can look it up where around that age. Um, it's a lot of where people like me become incarcerated, do things that are damaging to their life entirely. And mine was a mental breakdown, which made me not be able to finish college. So I went into the workforce. And when I went into the workforce, I realized I had an aptitude, if you will, for leadership and sales, but I was a tyrant. I mean, a tyrant. I'm still a big, hard personality, but I mean, I was a tyrant. And what I mean by that was, but I wasn't all the time. So here's the thing. Sometimes I was this nurturing, caring person that won all of these training and promotion awards where I brought out the best in people and I got them promoted quickly. That was one side. But there was another side of me that if you threatened my ability to survive, to thrive, I would emotionally retaliate.
mm,
And it would be in subtle ways. It would be putting you in your place. It would be um, just letting you know that you were not going to eliminate my ability to care for myself. Very self centered, self absorbed, about myself. And I hurt people. I hurt people I cared about. I hurt people that I worked with. I literally walked over people to get promoted if I had to, if I thought they were weaker than me, because I was in such survival mode that the survival mode beat out my natural heart, which was to help people and grow people. That need to survive outweighed the natural who I was created to be. And so, in those relationships, I'm lucky to I have relationships still from this time and younger, which is a miracle by God. But in many of those relationships in the work arena, um, well, I'll sum it up. One of my team behind my back called me Xena the Warrior Princess. And, they thought it was funny, and everybody in the company knew that was my nickname. Now, I won all the awards, and I was getting promoted very quickly, and my bosses all loved me, but I think Xenia the Warrior Princess says it all, right? I was willing to do whatever it took, tell you whatever you needed to hear to get you to do whatever I needed you to do, because my career was my saving grace. So, going back to my younger self, I think that, she put a mask on very quickly, and she learned to hide what was really going on, and I learned to hide who I authentically was, because survival was more important than being authentic to myself
Hmm.
then, before tons of therapy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that man, that's powerful though. And I know in the past you've shared, you walked away at a point in your childhood from
Mhm.
everyone you loved to
Yeah.
escape your abusers. And it sounds like what you're telling us now is that survival mode and you being in survival mode shaped your experiences and the way that you treated others well into your young adulthood.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, I don't think people realize the power of survival mode. And it's interesting is people are like, "Oh, but you're a survivor." Yeah, survival in and of itself sounds lovely, but survival mode is a trauma response, right? It's not thriving. But you're right, at 14, I had enough. Now, all of my abuse didn't stop then, but
Hmm.
the big chunk, the horrible, horrible living with my mom, near around my mom, ceased to exist at 14. And I just want you guys, let me put you in a picture. I want you guys to all think through with me right now. I want you to think about you're 14 years old, everyone you've ever loved, anyone you have ever cared about, every relationship you have ever established, where you have lived. You wake up and realize that if you don't walk away from all of that, no matter how painful, you won't survive. That you won't survive. That you innately understand that you will be a statistic, that you'll kill yourself, that you will, um, do whatever it takes to not be in that environment.
Hmm.
And you know that. You have a knowing of that so deeply that the pain of walking away from everything, not just the abuse, everything beautiful and good
Hmm.
was so critical to your survival. It's what you have to do. So, at 14, I did that. And I walked away from some people that I loved, that were my safe people in a very hard time. The person I loved the most, which was my great grandma. And she's the one who introduced me to Christ, and she's the one who I do a credit to a lot of who I am today. But I walked away from her, and but I walked away from some friendships that um, cost me dearly, dearly, and um, but I couldn't think, Jada, about them. I couldn't think about the impact on them. I
Yeah.
couldn't think about how much it was gonna hurt them, devastate them, I later learned in my, late 30s, my male best friend, who knew me really well, we reconnected in my late 30s, and I got to hear his heart of how just gut-wrenching, what I did, what it did to his heart and to his family's heart.
Yeah.
And when I left, I left. Like, I severed ties.
Hmm.
And I felt like I had to do that. I don't know if I did need to do that, but I felt like it at that time that I had to sever that. And so I realized how much I had hurt people in order to survive. And but survival makes you selfish. It makes you self-absorbed. It makes you think about, what are you gonna do?
Mhm.
It's not a great place to live. I think I keep going back. It's people are like, "Oh, I'm a survivor," and they want to be excited, but survival hurts.
Mm. Yeah.
It hurts.
Yeah. So now that you have had the chance to look back through, your past through the lens of compassion and truth, what impact did that have on you as you did begin to face the fact that you had unintentionally hurt other people?
Well, I'll tell you, it wasn't till I started going to therapy.
Mm,
'Cause when you're embraced in brokenness
mhm,
and survival mode, I would love to say that you have the capacity to really think about other people. But
mm,
you're limited. This is why being in a victim mentality or survival mode robbed you of authentic relationship with self, authentic relationship with Christ, and authentic relationship with anyone that you love. Because that filter, I always say, like, we all have, if we think of a screen right in front of us, and whatever we put out, it goes through a filter. And when it goes through that filter, and that filter is pain, I need to protect, I'm the victim, any of that, then you're never going to have connectivity on the other side, right? And so, what I, if you're the lens that I learned in therapy is how much, first of all, how how often my words hurt people, how much I hurt people's careers, how much I hurt people's identity, like, attacked them, if that made me feel good in the moment. How much people who had loved me and been with me and then I walked away from them, how I made them feel abandoned and unvaluable and unimportant. And but also you sit back and you see how much life you didn't live, how many relationships you could have had that you didn't have, the love you could have received that you didn't, the safety you could have felt but you didn't, the laughter, the joy. You rob yourself of so many things because you are surviving. And and you're hurting people. And here's the thing I want you to know, it's not like I woke up and every day and like, I'm gonna hurt you today. It wasn't like that, because the authentic me was still in there. And so there was this war going all the time of saying, why are you doing that? Like, I can remember before a lot of therapy, I would go into what I would call a rage. Okay, now when you have very high abuse like I did, in my early 20s, I was diagnosed with borderline personality disorder. Not uncommon with the amount of abuse I had. Now, what is uncommon is that I'm restored from that. Now, that took a lot of God and a lot of therapy. But when you're in borderline personality disorder, it is you are reactive. You are self-centered. It's about you. It's a heightened sense of all of this, and, I can remember when I was in that state, in like, I'm getting red here even talking about it. Um, I can remember yelling at people, right?
mhm,
Like, crazy lady yelling at people and telling myself, "Stop, stop. What are you saying? Stop. You're hurting them. This is not gonna give you the outcome you want. This is not working." But the regulatory ability emotionally was so reactive to protect
mm,
that so it was this internal fight. I couldn't make it stop. That
yeah,
that is why it took so much counseling in order to work through all the emotions raging within me. Because here's what I want you guys to know. This is what I learned later in life. It wasn't that Athena was bad. It was that Athena's response to trauma produced more trauma for herself and other people. And until I worked out the trauma that was going inside my own mind and heart, I had to work on myself, love myself, and get regulated.
Mm,
Until I could do that, I could never like outwardly give anybody else anything other than chaos because chaos is all I had.
mm,
No matter how great the unabused person inside of me was,
mhm.
you know?
Yeah.
So I think through if anyone's listening and you know what I'm talking about if you've lived it. It's like an animal almost inside of you that you can't stop. That's not natural.
Mhm,
It's trauma. It's not authentically you, and there is help to get that chaos inside of you to stop so that you can become the person that you know is in there. And so, how I had to face it, I will tell you after years of therapy and finally coming to what I call my integration and calming of self, right? When I finally and I know this sounds crazy, but if you're in the therapy world, you know what I mean. It was this integration and where I had peace.
mm,
And the chaos was not all consuming in control all the time. And when that happened, then I finally had the cognitive and emotional ability, Jada, to look backwards and see the pain I had caused. And until that, I couldn't.
mm,
But I will say this, I it broke me for a while because I knew what it felt like to be abused, to be taken advantage of, to be hurt, to be demoralized, to all a lot of the things. I never physically hurt anybody or anything like that. Mine was more verbal, right? Um, but I digesting and understanding what I had done could have sent me into another chaos had I not had grace of God and good therapists to help me unpack it, and differentiate it from core value of who I am versus behavior, and then allowed me to script and figure out very much like people who do AA, making amends, going back and apologizing, telling people, "I'm sorry."
mhm.
Now, the only other thing I'm gonna say this, to this topic, it is not a light switch. When the peace and the chaos kinda came together, the integration, I had to learn to live in that, which meant I also had to learn to feel my, feelings. I had to learn to have emotion. I had to learn how to live in the present. I had to learn how to reconcile my past and what was happening in my present. That was a lot of work to do. So if you're listening to this, please don't think that one day I walked out of therapy and light switch went off and then woo, it was all rosy and everything was great. It's a process. I would say it took me the integration happened around 31, and it took me, I think, almost to 38 before it became more natural, and that I really understood the trigger points. We can call them PTSD moments or whatever, but trigger points where the chaos wants to roar its head and have control, and I can be like, no," you know? So and I have coping mechanisms with that now, and I have behavioral things that I can do, um, and there are times, even now, if I'm overstressed or something like that, that I realize that that is capable inside of me, and so sometimes I'm like, "You know what? I need a break. I need to go quiet self so that that old I need to protect myself doesn't come back out." Right. So,
Yeah. That's huge that
anymore.
you've been able to move into recognizing that and stopping it before hurting others now.
Yeah. It
That's huge.
Yeah, it is huge. And not that I don't hurt people still, it's just a different now it's more
Mhm,
normal human hurt,
mhm.
not this it's the other is just a different level. It's a
Yeah,
different level. But anyway,
yeah.
abusers know what I'm talking if you've ever been abused, you know what it is. We have to work really hard not to hurt other people. And it's why if you've been abused, it's why it's so important for you to get the help and so that we don't perpetuate. I mean, I don't know all the statistics. You probably would better than I do with all the studying you do, but abuse perpetuates abuse, and the generational, the more compound it gets, the worse it gets. So it's the unraveling of that and making it stop that stops that cycle for for us and those people around us. But
Yeah, absolutely. So earlier you touched a little bit on shame and we know that shame can be deafening, especially when we realize that we've caused others harm. So can you walk us through what that shame looked like in the early parts of healing and then how I know you mentioned therapy, but if there was other tools or resources that helped you move from that shameful mindset to you've been redeemed?
the very first thing is that so after I had the cognitive ability and emotional ability to really digest how much I had hurt people,
Mhm.
um, I had to before I interfaced with other people and asked for amends or asked for forgiveness, I really had to sit with myself and do an evaluation of what was me and what was filtered through the trauma response. Because I had lived through trauma since I was 5. I had to refigure out who I was, who the authentic person was in there and what her heart was and, what she wanted, who she was, all of those things. Um, and then this is interesting, but I literally had to get a visual image of what she was, and then I had to ask her to forgive me, right? And I had to forgive myself first. I think that's a key component. I had to give myself grace and give myself forgiveness because otherwise the shame would have had a stronghold. It would have always been there, holding on and telling me, yeah, but where this was, no, this is who you are. And I'm sorry that we reacted as a whole unit outside of our authentic self. And I'm sorry that we've hurt people. And I'm sorry that we did that. And so that act, right, took a lot of God. You can't give yourself grace unless you receive grace.
Mm,
But I had to receive grace from God first and then give myself grace before I could put that back out and ask for grace and forgiveness. And, so, that's really how I did it. It's still how I do it. When I mess up, I still go to the cross first, and then I ask for forgiveness within myself, and then I ask for forgiveness outside of myself. It is still a pattern of behavior. I don't know if it's technically correct. I don't know if it's even biblically correct other than going to God first, but it has really worked for me. I have to accept grace, give myself grace before I can go out and even receive it from an external person. If I'm holding on to something that I feel very shamed of, I'm not going to be able to receive grace from somebody else. It'll bounce, it'll be like, bing, it just bounce off like a rubber bullet. It'll be like, bing, it's not going to happen. So, but anyway, that's what's really helped me. And I've done a lot of study on shame and because shame is a string extremely used by abusers,
mhm,
right? And so shame has no place in health. Shame has no place in um, worthiness. It just doesn't have any place. But I'm not saying we don't feel it, but I just am hyper aware of it because my abusers use shame very well to destroy me and keep me quiet.
Mm.
And so, shame to me is like a kryptonite.
Well, and I think you're not alone in that. That's a very universal experience for people that have been abused is to for the abuser to use shame as
Mhm.
a mechanism to keep you quiet.
I've just on that point, if somebody is shaming you, manipulating you, or shaming you, red alerts should be going up. There's a difference between somebody keeping you accountable and somebody holding your feet to the fire than just shaming you.
Mhm.
And I'll say this too, God never shames us. He'll condemn, like, he'll get your gills where it's like, "Oh," but I consider, like, a correction, not a shame. Shame feels dirty, like abuse. Correction feels like, "Oh, dang it. I got," okay. You know? One is like a, "Okay, I know better than that." The other one is like, "Oh, then that means I'm bad. I'm horrible." One is feels like accountability, the other one feels like self-identity,
Mhm.
hit. God
Yeah.
never does that. He never hits our identity ever,
Mm.
because through Christ's blood, our identity is secure. So
Mm.
it is counterintuitive, right? He never, ever, ever would do that. It's not his character.
Preach
And
it.
so, right? But anyone who is shaming you, and I have shamed people before, and I'm just saying this from this perspective. Anyone manipulating you or shaming you, it's coming from their hurt. It is not a place of health. Please identify that. Understand what's going on. I'm not saying hate that person, but be aware that those things projected onto another person are not coming from a healthy perspective. It's coming from an abused, broken person breaking another person, intentionally or not intentionally. Okay. There are some people who do it intentionally. I would say the mass majority do it unintentionally because they're broken.
Mm.
Anyway.
That's good. Okay,
Yeah.
so take us back to the time or the turning point,
Mhm.
if there was a defining moment,
Yeah.
or whether it was over a period of time that you realized the impact you were having on others and realized that you needed to make a change.
My whole 20s. Um, in my whole 20 really, it was after I opened, even before I went to therapy, and when I was in my in therapy, I told you that internal fight, like, I knew it.
Mhm. Yeah.
Your gut tells you there's something in your gut is like, "Stop it," right?
Mhm.
After I got healed, not entirely, it's still a journey, I'm still being healed, but once I really got clarity, that's when I started to see it. But again, it wasn't, as I continued to get healed, and the deeper I got into my healing, the deeper I relieved shame, the more I got to know who I am, the more I got to understand who I am in Christ, right? The more I got to understand, then the more I realized, right? Um, and even today, if you are super close to me, if I'm tired and worn out, whoo, you better watch out, because my natural tendency, unfortunately, after living it for so long, is to I I have to fight even now to, when I'm really beaten down by life, or trying to hold too much on my own without God, or trying whatever, that,
Mhm.
I'm not getting enough sleep or whatever, I have to be very cognitive. And so I'm more cognitive now, so I can acknowledge it, hopefully stop it faster, or and go ask for forgiveness more quickly. But it's still, Jada, it's a life thing. I don't think you live the amount of trauma I lived through, and I'm not trying to highlight the trauma, without knowing that there is a trigger there that has to be checked consistently, because your body and brain just wants you to be safe.
Mhm.
But the way my body and brain was conditioned to be safe is not safety really, right? It's a false sense of safety.
Mhm.
that is actually damaging to myself and other people around me. And unfortunately, and I'm being very vulnerable, I also have a gift of influence on my life, and I'm a speaker, and I know that that's a gifting God has given me. So I will just say my words are double hurtful as they need to be. And that it was my abuse weapon.
Mm.
And it wasn't and by the way, I'm not I was more coy about it. I could be more, you know what I mean? Like I could hurt you in my 20s and you'd step back and you wouldn't I'd hit you blindsided and it wasn't so blaring that you would believe it,
Mm.
right?
Mhm.
So ugly. It goes back to here's a gifting God has given me early on in my life, but because it was filtered with this, pain and this brokenness, that I have to be extra careful of it. And my husband says that when we argue, and I know he would say he'd come on the show and say this. He was like, when you are screaming or yelling at somebody, it feels like they're dying. And he said, now the other is true. When you're standing up and you are edifying and helping others, it has the opposite effect. But he's told me for years, be careful because what is meant for good can be used for evil when you are angry.
Mm.
And so that's, you know, I think I heard that in the last 8 months. So just saying, it's
Yeah.
to being constantly aware, right? Just being constantly aware and realizing it and just being in control of your emotions, laying them down at God so that we're less driven by emotion and more by emotional stability and sanity and safety.
Mm. Okay. Yeah, that's huge. Thank you for sharing that. My last question, as we are wrapping up the interview portion, have no fear, we still have stats, statistics, and
Yay!
all the rubber meets the road. But
Yep.
as we're wrapping up the interview portion, for the listeners that are listening, that are carrying that deep regret over how they've treated others, maybe they found themselves where you were in your 20s and they want to grow, but they feel stuck. What would you say to them today about redemption, forgiveness, and hope?
Mm. Well, first of all, I want you guys, and I say this a lot, but you're not alone, okay? And I mean that not in the sense like you're not alone, like Pollyanna. I mean, you're not alone. Every toxic, ugly, hard thing you're feeling, somebody else has felt it. And I want you to know this. No matter what has happened to you, it doesn't mean it has to have changed you for life. Okay, I really want you to hear that. No matter what has happened to you, it doesn't mean it has to change you for life. It doesn't matter how old you are, how young you are. You can change the impact of negativity on your life. And now, how do you do that? One, you got to get honest. You got to get honest that it happened. You got to be honest with yourself, and you've got to get help. You've got to go to a church. You've got to go to a synagogue. You've got to go to a counseling session. You've got to go to someone that you trust. Tell them the truth. You have to be brave enough to be truthful. Um, Second, you've got to understand that not only are we not the behavior that have happened to us, but we're also not the ugly behaviors we did in brokenness. Okay. So, if we take a box and put everything ugly I've ever done or you've ever done, we are not defined by those things either. Okay. So, this is what's important. I don't care what you have done in your life, there is redemption, there's forgiveness, and there is hope for you. No one is hopeless. No one. And that's critical. And, if my mom, that you guys all know was my monster, if she could have recognized all of the stuff that she had done, if she had been honest and gotten help, and she could have taken that box of all the ugly things she did and gotten true help because she was aware of it, wanted to change, allowed God to change her. She would need to be medicated, allowed medication to change her, allow God to transform her. She still could have been a great person. And we're
Mm,
talking about the lady that sold me to drug dealers. Okay. I'm talking about that kind of behavior. She was still redeemable, but she wouldn't get there. Okay. So anything you have ever done is forgivable. And it doesn't have to define who you are. You can start changing today your behaviors and become the person that you were meant to be before the abuse. So please remember that. And remember this: forgive yourself. Allow God to forgive you and then forgive yourself first. Please forgive yourself. I don't, whatever it is, you're going to have to forgive yourself um, so that you can move forward. And there's never not hope. I have lived a life where many people could say there were segments of my life where it should have seemed hopeless. It never has been hopeless. I'm not saying it hasn't felt like it. I'm not saying I have begged God to let me go home, but I've never been without hope. And so there's always something worth fighting for. And so if you're the person that you have been the abuser, I want you to know that God forgives you. And interesting enough, those people who you've hurt will forgive you too if you actually do the work to change. If you actually do the work to change and become a new creation, the authentic, healthy you. But it has to be authentic. By the way, we can tell. We can tell when it's real or not. So it has to be authentic. And so that's really what I want to say is no matter what you have done, just know that it, there is hope for you, that you can be the person that you have dreamed you can be. You're not going to be able to do it alone. And I mean that you're going to need to get some help. I needed God, therapy, lots of friends, and lots of forgiveness along the way. So
mm. And thank you for sharing your story today, Athena. I know it will have an impact on many people. So thank you for
absolutely.
that.
Absolutely. I'm just glad I didn't ask anybody else to tell them what bitch they were to people. But hey, all right. So tell me there's some science and I'm not crazy, please.
Well, you're definitely not crazy. There is science, so I'll jump into that. So, I have a couple different things of science to share today, but the first one is out of the Journal of Counseling of Psychology. It is a research article published in 2015 that shows that unprocessed shame, especially shame over having harmed others, leads to higher rates of depression, anxiety, addiction, and self-destructive behavior. And shame, when spoken and processed in a safe way through self reflection, accountability, or amends, can become a catalyst for growth and healing.
Mic drop. That one right there. Nobody needs more depression, anxiety, addiction, and self destructive behaviors. None of us.
Definitely not. No, definitely not.
Nope.
The second one, it's an research article out of the Journal of Positive Psychology in 2018 shows that actively making amends, even if only symbolically, such as writing a letter and never sending it, reduces symptoms of guilt, improves emotional regulation, and lowers your stress levels. So, some restorative actions that help rewire the brain's self concept from I am bad to I am someone who is growing and taking responsibility.
Yes. Yeah. Love that.
And the last one is research shows that behavior change shows that owning your impact is necessary for growth, but doing so without self compassion leads to higher risk of relapse into old behaviors. And combining honest ownership with self forgiveness and compassionate accountability produces the most lasting healing and behavior change. And I think, Athena, you touched on that really well today. So,
Forgive yourself.
yep. So, summarizing all of those, own your impact, and it takes courage to do that. Making amends heals both the giver and the receiver. And then real growth happens when we pair honesty with self compassion. So,
Mm,
redemption is possible. It starts with the choice to face it.
mm, boom. That's good. That science was dead on. And that was right on the mark. I love it.
Hmm.
I love how that works. But all right, you guys, we want to do some rubber meets the road. And I know I'm the one that was talking, but I want to give you guys some clear action steps so that you can do something forward with this. But number one, name one way you've caused harm. Don't start with the whole bucket. Can we not do that? Like, well, you know, don't do that. Pick the big one, pick the thing and say, you know what, I'm doing harm here. And ownership, the scientist said this ownership gives us clarity, right? And it gives us a starting point to start forgiving ourselves and really asking ourselves, okay, what's causing this? You know, why am I doing this? Um, what is that trigger? There's so much when you identify it that you can unpack to start figuring out. And that's where you go, by the way, that is one of the best things to go to a therapist and sit down and say, hey, I'm doing this. And when I do it, I hurt people and I can't stop. Talk about a great place to start with a therapist. They'll unpack a whole bunch from that, but it's a great place to start because you know you want to stop harming yourself and harming other people. All right. So number two, write what you should say if you could. So maybe there are people who've passed away or people who don't want to hear your sorries. Put it in a letter. Okay. Write a letter to the person. If that person is emotionally stable enough to hear your truth, share that with them when you're ready. If the person is not emotionally safe enough, write it out anyway. Maybe share it with a therapist, share it with somebody. And a lot of times there's burn therapy where you write it out and then you burn it and let it go, but write it out nonetheless. Now, my prayer for every single one of you is that the majority of people in your life will allow you to write it out and you speak it to them. The only thing I will say there is when you speak, realize there's two perspectives. Okay, so two people are going to come from two different perspectives. Be open to hear their perspective as well, since it's a conversation in something that is healing. Don't go in it where you just think you're going to regurgitate something and then not have some engagement. To side note there, but healing, very healing. I have had to write letters to people. I wrote one to my great grandma that I knew at the very end of her life. She was one of the people I walked away from. And I know that broke her heart. But I also know that she knew it was necessary, which broke my heart. And so in therapy, I had to write a big long letter to her that I still have. And um, I know she gets it and she knows I had to do it to survive. But she's the last person on this planet I would have ever meant to hurt, and the one I think I will regret the most forever. But unfortunately, it was necessary, and I know she gets it. So, I have actually done that, and obviously you can tell it made an impact, but it helps you move. Number 3, practice self-compassion as you face it, and I've talked a lot about that when we were going through this, but you guys, I can't. Self-compassion is not something you do once. It's something you do maybe 100 times a day, especially when you're unpacking trauma and you're unpacking owning your own behavior because, depending on how long you've been in a situation where you are propelling, hurtful behavior, you might have to give yourself a lot of compassion as you work through that. So, please understand that shame is not helpful and that loving yourself and giving yourself forgiveness, but forgiveness that is also created with accountability and change. Okay. So it's not okay just to say, well, I forgive myself for being a bitch, right? Psh, I forgive myself. No, it means I'm also going to be accountable and I'm going to change my behavior. Right. So, self compassion, but also make sure that you stay accountable and give yourself um, the ability to change. And number 4, take one action towards amends. So think about if there's, if it's sending a letter, speaking apology, living differently. I will say, as somebody who has been hurt by a lot of people because they were hurt, um, I personally, and maybe I'm wrong, but I'd like to see you change before I hear I'm sorry. Okay. Um, I heard a lot of I'm sorries from my mom that meant nothing. So I wanted to see a behavioral change before I saw sorry. So as you want to do these amends, maybe you don't start with a letter. Maybe you start with behavioral changes. Something that is beautiful for you to do in life is to do something different than you normally do, where people see it and they're like, well, that's different. What's going on there? That is beautiful. And opens a door, by the way, for you to say, hey, by the way, I'm just glad, if I was talking to you, Jada, I'm so glad that you're seeing that because I wanted to come to you and tell you I'm sorry, but I wanted you to know that I authentically saw it and I was fixing it first. Talk about a powerful change. I mean, talk about there you've got action and meaning behind the apology. So something to
Mhm.
think about there.
Yeah,
But
and
it
taking
also means
accountability.
oh, right, right. And I mean,
Yeah,
huge thing there. I will say this too. If you are somebody that people have hurt you, watch their behavior. Be looking to see if it's changed, right? It truly changed, not manipulatively changed, truly changed. So sometimes it takes a minute, right? All right. So those are some of the things, but here's summarize those. Name the harm, write your truth, practice self compassion, and take one step right towards amends or changing your behavior. Um, I love this. Shame says you're stuck, but redemption is real. And so start today, right? Redemption is a real thing. I am not the statistics that I should be because of redemption and because of grace. So I hope you know today you can be different than anything that's happened to you or anything that you've done. God's big enough. You're big enough. You can do this. Where do we go from
certainly.
here? That was deep. That was a deep one.
That was a deep one, and there were 2 things that stood out to me. One is the ACE score, so I wanna link some information about that so that people can read into that if they don't know what it is and they're interested. And then the second thing that really stood out to me, you didn't actually name it, but I know you've been through it, so I'm gonna link it anyways, is
Yep.
green shoe.
Yes.
And so I will link that for anyone that wants to dive into what a therapeutic environment could look like for them. It's a great experience. I've seen Athena go through it firsthand, and so I
Life
would just say,
changing. Both my
yeah,
husband and business partner told me I was significantly different after it. Now, I will say I did a lot of therapy before I went through it, so
yep,
I was a great candidate for it, but it was
yep,
life-changing for me,
yep,
personally. I've had other people say it was marginally life-changing, and other people say it was absolutely life-changing. So, depends on where you go in at it, but, I'll tell you, uh, I can't express enough the need for great therapy.
yep. Definitely. So I do want to link those. So I will link those in the show notes. But aside from that, if you did enjoy this podcast, we want to invite you to like and subscribe so that you can join us next week and so that other people that may be battling these same things that you're battling can find the podcast easier as well.
Yes.
You can find us just about anywhere. So if you are searching for us on other platforms, social media, even Google, just type in Athena Captain's name. You're bound to find us. She's got a pretty unique one. But truly, in all seriousness, this is not your practice life. So don't wait for perfect. Start messy. Start scared. Just start because nothing changes until you do. So take that one step today toward the life that you want. Dare to share it with us. We will be standing here with you every single step of the way. We'll see you next week.